Hi, my name's Harvey Bravman. I am the host of Brookline Hub In-Depth, and I'm really excited about today's show because we have Joan Lancourt and Katha Seidman from Building a Better Brookline, and they're going to tell us a little about themselves and about their new initiative called BASE, Brookline Arts for Community Engagement. This is going to be great. I'm going to start with you, Joan. Joan was the commissioner or the chairperson for the Commission for Diversity, Inclusion, and Community Relations for the town of Brookline. Katha Seidman, who is also with Building a Better Brookline, is a great artist, installation artist. Is that the best way to say it, Katha?
Yeah, I'm also a production designer for television.
And a production designer for television, so you do know a lot about what I do.
Yes, I actually I'm gonna do something I never do, which is I actually have 3 Emmys.
3 Emmys. Wow, that's pretty incredible. Yep. So we're gonna have Katha back just to talk about the work. But right now we've got middle income professionals that can't afford to live in Brookline, low income professionals that, you know, have a hard time living here and moving up the ladder here. So let's talk about that. Tell us a little about Building a Better Brookline.
Well, Building a Better Brookline started, maybe 1.75 years ago, or maybe it's 2 years by now. And it grew out of a joint project between the Commission for Diversity, Inclusion, and Community Relations, the Housing Advisory Board, and the Brookline Economic Development Advisory Board. And the 3 of us almost simultaneously happened to notice a grant that was being given by CHAPA, which is the Massachusetts kind of housing affordability resource organization. And they were looking to give grants to 6 municipalities in Massachusetts to see if they could develop some models for how to increase housing affordability in the different municipalities, because it's clearly a problem that's everywhere. You know, it is a national crisis, the lack of housing affordability. Not only at the subsidized, low income levels in public housing, but as you said, Harvey, in the middle income, levels. And so we jointly applied for the grant, and we did not get it. They picked other municipalities, but we decided that we were going to do it anyway. And we knew the people at CHAPA, and what we asked them was, could we be part of the learning group that they were putting together, with these 6 municipalities that got the money. And they said yes, of course. So we have participated in their learning seminars and workshops. And they have a superb model for how to be more successful in terms of increasing housing affordability, wherever you are. And so we then formed Building a Better Brookline as a vehicle. One of the things that we had been told, I had been an executive coach in a housing executive development program for housing executives across the country, nonprofit organizations, at the Kennedy School for 10 years. And one of the EDs that I coached was the head of another Massachusetts resource organization called Massachusetts Smart Growth. And so he came out to the commission and talked about, what was the latest and greatest in how to get more affordable housing. And one of the things he said is, if you just stick with housing, with the housing constituency and advocates, it's not, you'll never have enough power to change the zoning laws, change the rules, And so what other places were doing was forming coalitions with all the other issues and constituencies that had some interdependence with housing. So racial equity, if you're going to have more racial equity in Brookline, we need more housing affordability. Public health, we have learned, if we've learned nothing from COVID, it's that housing is a public health issue. Transportation, if you're going to have more, housing affordability, it needs to be near transportation. And there are major transportation corridors in Brookline. Environmental sustainability. If you're going to build anything, it needs to be green, and rehab, we need to be putting energy efficient utilities in housing and heating and all of that. So the environmental sustainability constituency has a foot in the game. And then the sixth one is economic development. If we're going to do all this, we need to have a tax base that can afford, to build affordable units, organize, the business community around, the kind of walkable neighborhoods with shops and, that people use. And so that we brought together those constituencies. At first it was 5, and then we've recently added the 6th, which is the public health. And we decided that our strategies were going to be education and organizing. And so we started with 2 educational forums that we did just as COVID hit. So we did them on, as Zooms. We had about 200 people attending each one. The first one was to talk about the interdependencies of those constituencies, how they played together and why we needed to support each other, to build enough power to, get stuff into, the zoning board, the town meeting, the select board. And then the second one, we said, well, where have they done this successfully? And so we looked around and we identified Minneapolis and we identified Somerville. And so we got the lead organizer from Minneapolis and the one of the lead planners from Somerville to come and talk at a second forum about what they did and what made it succeed. And Minneapolis did a very unique approach in which they targeted first what we are been calling the underrepresented population. So the low income, the BIPOC, the immigrants, the the people who don't show up to select board meetings, and testify. And they reached out to them by using artists who created various interactive processes, games that made it comfortable for people to participate. It wasn't like you had to get up in front of 200 people and, at a mic and talk. And they went to the neighborhoods. It wasn't come to City Hall. They went out to community centers, street fairs, farmers markets, you know, whatever was in the community to talk to people where they lived. And so they gathered a lot of data that way. And they did another unique thing that I think was part of what made it work, is that they created feedback loops. So whenever they got information from these groups, and then they took it and analyzed it and, you know, do what planners do, they went back to the communities and said, here's what we heard. Did we get it right? And so they kept those loops going the whole several years that it took them to do this, you know, Minneapolis 2040 plan. And we were very taken with that, because our commitment as building a better Brookline was that those voices here in Brookline were the ones that we were particularly committed to making sure get into the conversation. And this year, it happens, the town's housing production plan is being revised. And, you know, probably as we speak, they are signing a contract with a consultant. And there is built into that RFP a very, you know, rigorous community engagement element, you know, to the plan to make sure that those voices are included. And so what we've decided is that, you know, we're a little bit more boots on the ground than a consultant is, and that we, you know, have, we're committed to partnering with the consultant. And we've run series of focus groups already, small groups, you know, from the different constituencies, including public housing, to ask them what's their vision for Brookline? What do they love about Brookline? What do they not want to lose as things change? And then what they need, what are the needs, you know, in terms of housing, racial equity, transportation, environment, public health, etc. So in, you know, a long nutshell, if you will, or a big nutshell, that's how we got started. That's what building a better Brookline is. And what BASE, you know, Brookline, the Arts for Community Engagement project, is a version of this arts for community engagement that Minneapolis used.
So I've skimmed through arts. I think it's called the Minneapolis 2040 Civic Engagement Plan, Katha. And when I looked at the 2040 part of it, you know, I was sort of, it reminded me of what you're trying to do and how big it is. And sometimes when you try to do really big things, it takes time. And what impresses me about that is, you know, what we view of as, you know, our idealistic view of America, of being American, you know, with you know, starting with the founding fathers, is trying to develop things that would affect future generations, not just your own. So by working on something like this, and it's, you know, it's 2021 now, so I'm sure you want things to turn around faster than 2040, but still we're talking about something big. You can't get more real than housing. I mean, that's the basis, where you live, where you're allowed to live, where you can have a family. What does it feel like to be in a project that attempting something this enormous?
Well, I gotta say that as an artist, which I'm sure you know too, stepping off into the unknown is what you do. You don't know what you don't know, but creativity is finding in that space of unknowing some direction and sort of having that goal in the distance that you're trying to get. I think that one of the daunting parts about working with the housing production plan as a kind of, we want to be part of the community engagement and therefore have voices that are not heard generally in these kind of relatively short-term dynamics. So the housing production plan is a 5-year plan. It talks about what kind of housing and what should the town do about it over the next 5 years, and where it should be. And it has a big range of possibilities, but it's always been done, and the consulting with the community has always been done in these kind of very organized forums that don't reach very many people. And so Minneapolis took 3 years of community engagement before they really, formulated their 2040 vision. And I wanted to share, because I think this is really the best. One of the things they said about in Somerville was the old way they used to do it was the planning committee would decide, or the town would decide what they're going to do. They're going to announce, and they have these little conversations, and then with various groups, and then they announce what they're going to do, and then they defend it. And Somerville and Minneapolis and places that have really tried to open the fora to more people and really listen, you have to do a lot of outreach to get people engaged. You have to have a dialogue with them. And through that dialogue, you figure out what you want to do. So you decide, and then you implement, and then you start over. We're going to implement it. So then you have some method of going back to the community and saying, how do we do? We tried this, we listened to you, we came up with these great ideas, and we implemented them, and then, well, maybe you want to tweak it a little bit. So you built into that process is a continuing engagement. So one of the things we're trying to do with BASE is to build a way for the arts to be intimately involved with the community outreach, community engagement that the town does over time. So our long-term project isn't the HPP so much as it is embedding arts, the particular way that the arts engage people, that's different from going to, say, a board meeting and speaking up, or going to a focus group in a meeting and speaking up. Because one of the things that the arts does is it can be entertaining, it can be storytelling, and it's multimodal. You're not just talking, you're not just speaking. You can do it by as simple a thing as writing something down and putting on a Post-it board. You don't necessarily have to say anything to anybody. It's like, I can just do this and I'm going to be heard. And if you set it up so that the town is part of the listening, who's being told, in a sense, people have more opportunities to communicate in ways that they may feel more comfortable communicating about things that can be, difficult. Like some people who live in public housing don't want to talk about what their issues are because they're afraid of, possible retribution. And I mean, that's true in Brookline, and people have said that. So how true it is, in fact, I don't know, but the reality is that people aren't necessarily going to speak up. So how do we give them an opportunity, give people an opportunity to be more forthcoming with their concerns?
You also have, don't you have, by doing it this way, by going to the people, for lack of a better experience, don't you end up with, you know, multiple different types of people, their opinions, because you're not, it's not just a person who's comfortable on a soapbox. It's not just a person who's comfortable with a microphone in their hand. It's just a regular person like the rest of us who just wants to live in a place that they can afford and have an avenue for their children to get educated and to, for lack of a better expression, live the American dream or live in happiness. And now you're going to them, and also by doing that, it creates a different kind of feeling toward the group by those that are like, you care what I think, you're coming to me for what I think. I mean, I know from my experience interviewing people, that can be a very emotional thing when people have gone their whole lives. It's not that they're that shy. It's just that no one ever listened to them when they spoke, so they just stopped talking. It's. Go ahead.
I think that's really one of the issues that Brookline is struggling with, is that you know, people in the past, particularly low-income people, people of color who have not been listened to, have participated in the past, but they haven't been listened to. And so their attitude, not surprisingly, is, you know, been there, done that, don't want to do it again. Nothing changed. And it's a way, you know, I have other things to do with my time. And so the town has also, you know, this is one, you know, building a better Brookline, and this base approach is one initiative, but the town is, you know, the Commission for Diversity, Inclusion, and Community Relations began a community engagement committee that wrote, based on a warrant article, a community engagement plan for the town, in which the town departments are required to develop goals, SMART goals, that include community engagement on some project or other that they're doing. We also have, again, based on a warrant article, just almost completed a whole suite of racial equity training for all the departments, because, you know, looking at how can the town, you know, engage, you know, all of the, you know, people of color in a variety of ways, both as employees, as contractors, in procurement. How can the departments serve, you know, the underrepresented populations in Brookline better? You know, so this is a sort of, maybe, hopefully, an issue whose time has come, you know, and there's some of these forces are, you know, creating a synergy, you know, to begin to address, you know, the 400 years of, you know, racism and you know, lack of equity, the economic, you know, disparities, you know, and so I think, you know, and it's a matter of, you know, as Katha said, how do we, we're seeing this as a pilot or a prototype, you know, that could then be used for any kind of engagement, when you particularly want to engage, you know, the communities of people that aren't, I guess for lack of a better word, the usual suspects who show up at select board meetings to testify, because you could use this approach for any issue. We're using it for housing and, environment and public health, but you could use it for anything. And so we really see it as a longer term, it would have been great if we had it in place for ARPA, the priorities that need to be set for, the American Rescue Plan monies. But we want it to not just be a one-time usage of this approach.
The public, you at home watching, if you have some thoughts on housing and a better way, or you just want to let the rest of us know about your experience, so that we could use your experiences to create and build a better Brookline. Brookline Art and community engagement is going to make an attempt on open studios, which is October 2nd from 11 to 5 in 2 locations in Brookline, but we'll be at the Station Street location. Full disclosure, I part of the group and a late arrival. So I've been to 2 meetings so far, and I want to help out all I can. So tell us about what's going to be happening on October 2nd at Open Studios, and then also at the High Street food
pantry.
Well,
I think we were looking for places in the community, to take this, sort of arts approach. And we have a puppeteer who will be doing something around, puppets talking about housing, and maybe, having a conversation with the audience, sort of a roving puppeteer maybe. And then, you will be doing some interviewing of people on, sort of a live, you are there with the interview up on a screen. And then I'll let Katha talk about the third piece, which is a kind of easel board, or that gives people an opportunity to really share their thinking about housing.
The goal of all of these projects is to really get people to kind of respond to certain questions or prompts that are things like, sort of taking our cue from Minneapolis. What do you like about your neighborhood? Would you like to be able to walk to different shops? What are the shops that are important to you? How do you get around? Is it easy for you to get to your job, or do you need different kinds of transportation? What do you, is there anything that's important to you about, environmental sustainability in relation to housing that you might think would be great to have? And then the kinds of questions that Joan asked: what do you want to keep? What's really important for you? What do you love about your neighborhood? And trying to get people to kind of pay attention to the urban landscape in which we all live and how it functions, not just what it looks like, but how it functions. And so part of what we're trying to do is get people to answer these kinds of questions that we can then gather into data that can inform people like planners or the HPP or ARPA funding. So that the kind of conversation that we hope to initiate by doing these arts projects actually will have embedded in them some real specificity. So it's not just, you're not just sort of saying something and it's going to go into nebulousness. We're going to actually really try to gather this information and make sense out of it. And to some extent, it's a little bit like voting. I want to vote for, energy efficient apartments, and I want to vote for, lots of solar panels on roofs. It could get that specific, but the general question is it really, how important is, environmental sustainability, climate sustainability to you? But anyway, so I just wanted to make sure that it wasn't just, a kind of artsy thing that people kind of played with. So there's the puppet performance and what Harvey's going to be doing. And so we're going to have a kind of an A-frame easel kind of thing that is going to have some questions, those questions to which, basically it's really simple. One form or another, you're going to get to say, I want this, or I vote this way, or this is what I think about that. So all of those questions that I kind of talked about will be there in a way so that you can just instantly respond to it very simply, and have a sense that you're being heard.
And I think there will be some very specific questions about housing and what kinds of housing. I'm elderly and I need to have a building with an elevator, or if I'm disabled, I need to have an apartment that has wide door frames. And the board is done up in a sort of artistic way with areas below where you can put up Post-it notes. So you can write what you want specifically on a Post-it note, or you can vote for priorities of, we want the public housing to renovate the community rooms. You can put a vote for that. Or you can, be specific about, I need an elevator. So it's another way of gathering data from a group of people who, as we've said before, don't come to, select board meetings and testify. So we're doing it at the Open Studios on October 2nd. We're going to be doing an afternoon in mid-October at the High Street Veterans Housing Food Pantry. And then we are hoping to do one maybe toward the end of October at the Farmers Market. So those are, and we're seeing this as, and we're picking now, because of COVID, outdoor places where people can gather, because, indoor is still, too risky. And then we hope that we'll have another opportunity with the housing production plan in the spring, because this is going to take all year, the revision. They'll be gathering data now for needs, what are Brookline's needs in housing? And then probably toward the spring or summer, it will be, okay, here are some possible solutions. And what do you think of those? What did we hear you, or what's missing and stuff like that. So we see this as a, developmental and iterative process to see how can we make this approach work in Brookline.
Well, thank you both for being here, Joan and Katha. Right before the ending, we're gonna give you some links to Building a Better Brookline and KathaSeidman.net, so you could see her artwork, and also Open Studios and anything else that will help you on your journey. Please come to Station Street on October 2nd and enjoy the art, and tell us what you think of what you would like to see Brookline look like in terms of housing in the future. Thank you for being with us today.
Thank you for having us.
Thank you.
Thank
Take
you.
care.
Hi, my name is Danielle Myers of ADW Video Productions and BrooklineHub.com. BrooklineHub.com is a 501c3 nonprofit online publication dedicated to community building through local reporting and events. Brookline Facing Civil Rights was produced by our founder, Harvey Bravman. The film is about the experiences of African Americans who helped break the wall of segregation that existed in Brookline before the civil rights laws were passed in the 1960s. Last year, the film sold out the Coolidge Corner Theater and included a panel discussion on inclusivity. You can stream the film and the discussion on BrooklineHub.com in exchange for a donation to the Brookline Community Foundation's Safety Net Fund. You can also stream Soul Witness, a film that features interviews with Brookline Holocaust survivors conducted 30 years ago, on soulwitness.org. For the last 11 years, Harvey has been interviewing outstanding teens as part of an event held at the Coolidge called the Brookline Youth Awards. The Brookline Youth Awards are an opportunity for Brookline residents to hear about the character, challenges, and dreams of its young people, as well as adults dedicated to their success through the power and intimacy of video interviews.